Welcome to this webinar. This is a very special edition of our webinars. This is the last of this first cycle. Probably we're going to have others. So, but this is the last of this first cycle, and I'm here today with the European Guild for Structural Integration faculty. So we have 7 members and accumulated experience that is exceeding the 200 years altogether, and others is calculating 250. So later we check how it arrives to this sum. But well, it's a lot. Even if it's only 200, it's really a lot. The title of this webinar is going to be Structural Integration and Inspiration in Our Lives. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out more about the life, the experience, the story, the process, the thoughts of all of our panelists related to SI, but not only to that. I have some questions. I have already received from you guys some questions, and I will ask them to the panelists for you. During this call, clearly you can ask questions in the chat. Better if you press the button question and answer. For me, it's easier to find the question there. I'll start with the first question. I'll start by asking them something specifically. But before I start with question, I would like to introduce them all in the order I see them in this little puzzle on my screen. So I first see Neil on my left, Neil Powers. We have Neil C. Silvera, we have Alex Urbanski, Fulvio Faudella, Adam Polanski, David Davis, and Bert Smith. Hello, everybody. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. So the first question I'm going to ask you is common for you all. I mean, and I would like a reply from you all. You can find your own angle to this question. The question is very simple, what is structural integration for you? But when I say this, I'm not really very focused on a definition of the word, but rather what is in your experience for your life, what has been, how you come to the structural integration, what does it mean in your daily life? So that is the angle of my question. But I mean, you go where you feel like this is more useful for you in this moment. And to all the people that is listening, I ask you to support us with your attention, and let's see where this dialogue goes. Okay. So who now starts with this? What is a structural integration for you? And any volunteers? Should I choose one?
Just pick one, Dario.
You.
I mean, I can start if you want.
Yeah, your microphone is on, so.
I'm the only one that's on, probably. Huh? Well, I can probably answer this question best by looking back. I can tell you that ever since I started working with structural integration, it forced me also to work on myself. And ever since I started working on myself, my life has like magically fallen into place. So where before that things were a little scattered like a puzzle that you can't fit properly together, the moment I started walking with both knees facing in the same direction, I actually started having a direction in life. And from then on, my life has just been better and better and better.
Someone else? Fulvio, maybe?
Hello. Well, it's a path of life. It's a way to start the day and finish the day and and dream of it at night. It's, I would say, the surprise to every time meet a new challenge and meet a mysterious body, which is the place where I live, and it's the place from where I meet the other, and for me, it's about relationship.
Okay. Who's next? Nielsi. Unmute yourself. Oh, okay.
Okay. Am I? Okay. So for me, it was a great discovery. It made me to find structure integration, to find this work, and to start understanding it and studying. It gave a center to my life. It became my main thing in life. It's the center of my life.
As you go, I don't want to pick you, to pick the right one. When you're ready, you start, okay?
It's an interesting thought that you said, what inspires one about this work, me in this case. And the first thing that comes to mind is inspiration is also breath and breathing. And this is a way of life and living, of conscious awareness. And I always thought that this would be a great next step to the next thing in life. And every day is the next thing in life. And the continuum that it presents and the opportunities it presents to work with self and others is extraordinary, uncommon, and wonderful.
Adam, Bert, Neil, would you like to add something? Neil, you're muted. Yeah. You can probably leave the microphone open, because I think the connection is good. So let's try with the microphone open. This will cut out a little bit the technical issues.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I agree with everyone that's talked about. First of all, it's interesting for me that this life's work that the others have referred to is simply that. It's our life's work. I remember meeting Jan Sultan for the first time, and he said, this is not a job, it's a way of life. And it resonated inside me and still resonates inside me when I hear people talk about the same thing, a way of life. It's succinct, and it's the whole package. It, as David Davis said, it opens us each day to an adventure. And I'm humbled by it. I'm in love with it. And it gives meaning to our lives. That's my first response. I'm very interested to hear what Bert has to say.
Yeah, I'm quite moved by what happened in those weeks, actually, and there was so much recognition for me in how everyone was talking about their journey, and how Rolfing and structural integration sort of came on that moment in your life. For me, it was very helpful in my search, in my quest for finding connection in body and mind. So I studied psychology, and I didn't have any answers. And I think connecting to the body in general was giving me a space, a possibility, and an experience rather than working with my mind. And so starting with, having been Rolf and then studying Rolfing became the study of my life. And it was, as David was saying, it's day by day work. And it brought me into very interesting discoveries about how important the physicality is in opening and finding a space where I feel that I belong. And that's not, it's not stable, it's always changing. And the way I would talk about it is quite different from now, from maybe as it has been. So it's sort of guiding me in my exploration of finding myself. And others, of course. Is that okay, Neil?
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Well, what can I say now after all of those guys? It's a path, it's a way of life. I like what David Davis said recently, that it's an active philosophy, something what we practice every day, discover every day, and continue to do.
Adam, how many years have you been practicing?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
15.
15. So my next question would be, is there something that during these 15 years has changed then in your relationship with SI and with the work, and what is instead been stable, that is always been the same for you?
So let me make sure I understand the question. You're asking me what's changing and what remain the same.
Yeah, in your understanding of structural integration, or in your way of practicing structural integration. And when I say practicing, I mean, for me, practicing is receiving, giving, and teaching and thinking of structural integration. For you all said is a way of working, and we in this panel, I think we all receive sessions, give sessions, teach the work, and we think a lot about that. So is there something that has changed and then something that is still stable and still not evolved, or is the core? I don't know how to say, but
That's an interesting question. I think work in the office is a base of my structural integration, being a practitioner, not being a teacher, not instructor. Just doing the work in the office is the most important part. And of course, it's changing. The length of the sessions is changing. The number of people I'm seeing is changing. But I think office work is the base. I don't know if it's the same, but it is something what I could say it's always there. And the view, how I see the work, how I do the work, it's changing every day, I would say. Maybe not dramatically every day, but it's changing all the time. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
I mean, I would like, for example, for you that have practiced for so many years. So if what is the constant in this work, and what has changed a lot?
The constant is change. Everything is always changing. I do it for almost 40 years, and it changes every day. So I discover new things, I experiment new things, I get fascinated by something that I didn't know before or thought I knew. it is change. It's always changing, and that's what makes it so interesting.
I think the constant over my whatever 25 years or so of work has been the recipe. I really haven't changed that approach too much. I do a basic series with every first client. I think what has over the years changed the most is my depth of intention. That I feel that I'm thinking during the session or intending really on much, much deeper layers in the body than I was initially. And that's what first comes to mind, that I really think on the bony level nearly, and not anymore. It's not a question of how much you press, it's a question of what you intend to move, okay? That's the short answer, I think, for me.
Well, to follow what Aish says, it's the same in a certain way for me. I mean, I realize that what doesn't change is the great fascination I have for the recipe, and the curiosity that it arouses in me in practicing this work. That's, but I also realize that I'm changing day by day because of the exposure to the recipe, both receiving it and conveying it to other human beings, and also sharing with the colleagues. So it's constant changing, growing inside, and in the same time, it's a continuous coming back to the source.
I never know what I'm going to learn on any given day. And I'm always happy to have a new client because I don't know what they're going to teach me. And I do about 1/3 of my work is basic series work, new people coming and going. And then I have also some regulars, and then I have people who come and go. They work with me for a while and they'll come back. And one of the things that I love is how I have to continually be prepared. And actually it's a moment-to-moment preparation of how I adapt the principles of the work to the body and the being at hand. So I have to really listen to what this person, their body really needs and their being, and give them the best session that's approximates what that is. So I really have to be able to feel free to be centered and present, and yet commune with the people who come in and allow them to teach me what I don't already know.
Thank you.
So what I'm thinking of when I'm asking what didn't change is very much that the experience I had from the first time I was rolfed or touched till any time I was, for instance, rolfed. It's something like there's a constancy in that feeling. What I understood of what that space was is changing continuously. More quickly in the beginning and sort of slowing down, getting more still, but very much trusting that feeling, and then sort of working with that in being with people and trying to create that space that I felt was is sort of the ground of nature. And it maybe it sounds big, but it's like many moments in my life, meeting special people, being with normal situations. I was thinking of Neil reminded me of when I went to Esalen, California in the 70s. It's where I met not only this work, but environment and people and teachers. And somehow that always was where I was looking for, and rolfing was kind of in the center of that experience. And so I still have it when I, you know, every day in my work, if I, you know, and it's not limited to rolfing, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's something what I feel as a goal for every session. And I don't know how we get there and what we get, but there's a kind of motivation or feeling or ground or space. And I feel that so often when we are in an environment with rolfers and the environment, the space that is created there, and the inspiration that comes from that. So.
Thank you, Bert. Neil, you want to?
Sure. I'm very touched on what everyone has shared, because it's it all feels deeply correct and connected. Why I kind of fell into this work is, first of all, I immediately knew it was my life's work, even though I wasn't looking for my life's work at the time. I thought I was happy as a cook. I was. And then it became the perfect job for me, because first of all, it involves touching. As far as I'm concerned, that's the oldest profession in the world, touching. And I get to work by myself. And there's an independence to that, of course, the obvious, that is a challenge, and it's humbling. The recipe itself, Dr. Rolf's 10 sessions, it's like a book of knowledge. It just, you can read it and reread it and reread it. You can watch it as a movie. You can listen to it as an audio in your head. And it just keeps, for me, unfolding. It's an adventure. And I'm touched and humbled to have found my life's work. And I think many of us are, that we found this as our life's work. It's a learning process. And if anything has changed in my practice, first of all, my touch has become more sensitive. I'm aware of my touch so much more. And I keep coming back to Dr. Rolf's concept that you start from the outside and you go deeper and you go deeper. And I find that I'm just acutely more aware of the superficial restrictions in each session that I need to address first before I go deeper. And these are just chronic behavior patterns that people develop that I just need to keep undressing. And that's how my work has changed the most, is I start on the outside with each session and then I can go deeper depending on the session itself and the individual's availability. That's a rambling on how I feel and think.
These two were my two questions. I'll probably come up with other questions later on, but now I got some questions that I've received from Jennifer. Can I go with them?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, yes, I have to find my new glasses. So Jennifer, she's asking something. She made a threefold question: is present, past, and future. And she starts from the past, and she's asking, so what parts of Dr. Rolf's historical viewpoints, techniques, philosophy do you think has been lost over the time? And the other aspect she's asking, if do you feel like the way the work is evolving is evolving in ways that she might not have approved? If yes, how? And I mean, I think that's enough for the past part. So essentially what you think or what you feel that is getting lost? Are there evolvement or evolution of the work that you don't feel like is going in the right direction, or you feel like Dr. Ryderhoff would not have approved? Alice, you want to comment, or was
I could say something?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because I think the way the question is kind of put, I have to change it in my mind a bit, because I feel that I was thinking about reflecting on it, and what I thought that there was in her vision, there was a way that she was able to change paradigms, the way she looked at the relationship of flesh and bones, you know, and how she was looking, you know. I remember, for me, that was amazing to hear, you know, the way you look, you see a muscle or you see tissue, you know. It's like whatever you see is how you look. And so for me, the essence of the work is it's kind of changing your predicaments. It's I think even in a small book of her on physical reality, it's something where she finishes and saying, if you want to change the result of your work, you have to change your predicaments. And I love that. It's like, so, and then, you know, going into this question, I think, how can you, what do you want to know about that? You know, it's like you can learn doing this. And the way we do that, and we take this, in our own perspective and motivation, that's the individual development of each of us, and it's a challenge to sort of work in that vision. So, you know, my answer would be, no, there is nothing really lost, and it depends on, you know, how we are taking it on the road. And I think what I heard this week together, I feel there is a lot of that that vision of that we can create a space out of that sort of basic way of changing predicaments and paradigms. And I think that is for me, you know, the basis of the work. And there we can, of course, struggle and sort of fight with each other about anything, and sort of maybe come to the conclusion, you know, that there's a lot of ego stuff when you start going in there that way, or you meet yourself, you know, sort of losing the fight on the road. And you know, anytime when I start doing rolfing and put my hands on it, I'm looking for being informed. Because I don't know. Basically, that's something that I experience a lot. I don't know. And yet in that not knowing, there's so much of possibility of being informed. Just continue, you know. It's like, I remember when I started learning rolfing and I had no idea when I put the hands on, what should I do? You know, my head was sort of going all directions. And I don't know, someone came to me and said, just do as if you were a rolfer. Just act, you know, do something. And I was so trusting for, okay, do something and you will be informed. So this is kind of, you know, what came up with me with that question, because I read the question before and I had some reflections on that. I don't know if that answers the question, but that was my reflection on the question.
We'll ask Jenny. We'll ask Jennifer later, or if she's online, she can comment.
I can maybe add a little of a thought that I had this morning when I read the question was, I think nothing has been lost. I think if you assume that something has been lost, you have to start at the beginning and think about what was there originally. But what was there originally will be interpreted in different ways by different people. And this has led to different schools interpreting the work in different ways. And none of these schools, from their point of view, subjectively have a feeling that they've lost anything because they started off in some way from a different interpretation of the work. And we have ours, and other schools have other interpretations, and I don't think anything has been lost.
You know, I think it's a continual voyage of discovery and rediscovery. And what I notice is that I have to stay open to learning all of the time. And it takes me on a journey, and I'll have a certain insight that I will pursue because, wow, that's cool. And I'll follow that in a certain direction with my series, with my work, and then I'll get to a certain point where, ooh, that leads me to another thing. Sometimes I go down cul-de-sacs, meaning dead ends, but then I have to come back to the beginning. I have to always have a beginner mind to be with the work in order to do the work. And I'm not so sure that things are lost so much as that we go off on tangents because that's the direction the work takes us for a while. And I have, you know, I see that over the years, this is my 43rd year of practice, I see over the years that sometimes I get into these cycles where, oh, I'm working harder. That's interesting. Why am I working harder? Oh, I'm working so much more sensitively. Gee, this is great. I love this stuff. And a couple of weeks later, I'm back at it. And so there's all kinds of levels and layers of cycles that, you know, I go through as a practitioner just in my day-to-day practice. And I think the same thing happens with schools, institutions. One thing and another is that we have a starting point. We start that way, but we're all circling around the center, and the work will always bring us back to that.
So somehow you're also saying, if I heard this correctly, that there is no wrong direction. As long as you are willing to go back and explore and see if that match or not, there is no wrong direction. That was the second part of the question from Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, the wrong direction, you know, is a value judgment. How do you know that it's wrong? And how wrong is it? And even if it appears to be wrong, you know, somewhere along the line we get to honor it, and it brings us back to center. Somewhere along the line we'll come back to center. Peter and I were teaching a class in Israel, and there was a practitioner in there who always did everything wrong. He did it backwards. He did everything wrong. And there was no talking to this particular gentleman about changing his particular strategy or anything else. And he was a senior person to me. And anyway, he would go about his sessions, and then he'd stand his person up, and I go, wow, that's interesting. They look pretty good. And I had to keep coming back to that self-organizing principle in every body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That every body has a self-organizing principle. There's another wonderful word I like, is autopoiesis, which has to do with the self-healing nature of the body.
Yes.
And we tap into that. And so I think we can do less wrong than we think what might be wrong. And then the other piece is, as we know, when somebody walks out after a session, they change more when they're gone than they do while they're in our office. So I have to be ready to go, okay, let's see how that did, you know? I may have judgments about myself and how I did the session. Oh, that could have been better, you know? But I have to let go, see what happens to have when they go away, because I have to trust that I did what was right at the time. That the communication between their body and mine and the work at large brings me back to, okay, I'm doing the best that I can in the moment, and let's see what happens. Let's see how it advances them down the line of their development.
Great.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to comment on this, or?
Well, I'll speak up. For me, I'm often reminded of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz when she goes, "There's no place like home." And there truly is no place like our own home. And for Dr. Rolfs, from my experience of the work we're learning, is the line, is the concept, the experience of having one's line, of being one's line. And the closing of a session, the completion of a session, the pelvic lift, the back work, the neck work, I find that extremely important in subtle ways and in obvious ways of connecting people to their line. And I realize during these webinars that, and I've said it before, I need to take a little more responsibility in eliciting this awareness with people, with my clients. As far as other schools and other organizations, if I don't hear the talk about the line, I become concerned. I become a little afraid that they're leaving home, the home of the concept of the line. And I usually don't say anything. I just listen because that's just my nature, is to listen. But that's the home. For me, the line is the home. And for me, I have to remind myself, no matter what little adventure I'm getting into, what learning process this client is providing for me, I want to return at the end of the session to touching upon their line. There's no place like home for me. That's my line.
Totally.
Well, I can maybe add one little thing to Neil. There was actually some years ago, I was really scared for a moment. I was very much afraid that, at least in Europe, this concept of line would get lost, you know, because people in workshops here in Europe were not talking about the line anymore. They were talking about all sorts of other things, but not about this home that Neil speaks of. And this is one of the reasons why we founded this organization. So, and I'm really glad and humbled that we're all there and thinking in the same direction. So for me, the line is not lost anymore, and I'm not scared anymore. That's nice.
Good.
Well, I like to add one word, which is human potential, for everybody to remember that that's what we are looking for. That's what we're getting by doing this work. And that's the main goal of this work.
Yes, I like it very much, because we tend to not, sorry, I want to comment on this because this is something that really touches me a lot. The human potential is an aspect that we tend to avoid discussing. Now, it's easy to talk about flexibility, range of motion, and fluidity and good posture, but then this work is about, for me, it's all about human potential, evoking and the potential that is within my own structure. And when I say structure, it's my being. It's the way I was born in this world is in this body. If I can have a coherence between my being and my body, and that type of coherence, so that building my body along the vertical line, that increase my human potential, and that's about evolution. that is a part we're shy talking about. Not we, some of us are shy of talking about. And also for me, when I talk to people, I tend to not to focus on this, but rather on the knee problem. Okay, I know that if I fix the knee problem, I'll do the rest, and vice versa, probably. You know, but I do like a lot the human potential concept, and the fact that the verticality is the way we used to get in line with intention for me.
If I can add a little thing, I mean, it's difficult. It's hard for me to add anything after all these amazing things that have been said by my colleagues. But also, I would like to remind myself, because when I read this question, it was hard to me to how to get into the time schedule, the present, the past, the present, and the future, because I think that the recipe, the doctor of work, is timeless in my way to see it. It's like when you are in front of a masterpiece, a creation. Masterpieces are timeless. So you can still read nowadays Shakespeare, and you feel the same thing. What I think is Dr. Rolf was great in doing is to create a context in which to express, in which to let things unfold by giving the possibility to. So anybody can have a different approach, I think, to when we look at, but I think there is no time in this work. There is no, when I look at the level of depth of this work, not the history of this work, but the level of depth, what it creates with the potential that it can free up in humans. It's like when you are in front of a masterpiece, and no matter geography, no matter time, era, you still are able to be presented by the masterpiece you're in front. You are being presented with your own humanity, and I think this is another way to see this subject.
Adam, you want to comment on this, or I'll ask you the next one? You tell me.
Who are you speaking to?
Adam.
Oh, I forgot what was the question. So go to the next one.
I go with the next one. So the next one is still from Jennifer. Is it Jennifer? Yeah, Jennifer. She's asking, and what is the one thing that helped you to evolve the most in your career as a rolfer, teacher? She's talking about rolfer, of course, it's structure integration, practitioner, rolfer, whatever. So what would be the one thing for you that helped you to evolve the most? It's not one for me.
Well, it's many.
Mm.
I start this one, so I will, yeah. Well, the first thing to start this path for me was Susan Melchior, who helped me to be at the Guild and go through my sessions as a teacher model, because back then in Poland there was no rolfers, and she offered this opportunity to, okay, come to States, you can be teacher model in the class. I was Nils's model. And if not Susan, I guess I wouldn't be here. And the second thing, if I can talk about two, I know it's supposed to be one, is I think the realization that you have to be on your own in the practice. For first 5 or 6 years, there was no one else here doing the work, and I just had to be on my own. And we all are on our own in the office, one-to-one with the client. yeah, those two things.
Susan, also for me was very special because for work I happened to be in Denver, and I called her and asked her if I can go and visit her, but I can only do that on Saturday. And she said, okay, we're closed, but I'll come for you. And we had like 2 hours of wonderful conversation in Boulder, and I fell in love with.
No, she was absolutely helpful, and also the spirit of, you felt welcome.
Yeah. Ooh, what else?
Well, I think if you know, all my teachers, all the workshops definitely is one part. Every client is another part. But apart from that, I think what life forced me, because of some serious injuries, is just to work on myself. And the more I worked on myself and discovered stuff about myself, the more I was able to pass an experience of life on to other people. And I don't think this work is possible without really working on yourself, without finding that balance and that line, or at least attempting to find it every day.
I think for me,
Go ahead, Nils.
it's best. It's doing the work, practicing. That is what teaches. And the other thing, a very close contact with my teachers, my masters, and my constant desire to be around and learn more, and then do the work.
I think one of the critical, something that was critical for me, and I know it was the same for each and every one of us, is that I happened to have a practitioner that transmitted something to me, and he mentored me. He made it possible for me to, and guided me gently to change what used to be a pretty fragmented life into this line of work. And you know, the initial contact that we have in the world with this work, which is whoever it is that initially delivered the work to us, enough for us to know that we needed to change our life, is fundamental to everything else that comes behind that.
I think I would like to add to what I said, the doing only this work, not studying. Those 5 years that Dr. Rolf asked us, I gave her 40. And I think that was very important. That it made me deepen in it deepened my understanding of the work. And by doing it again and again, and finding challenges and finding obstacles and staying with it and staying with it, and finally, that's what a big thing. I'm very glad I didn't study other things.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. There was no need. This is interesting enough.
And there's a lot more on this to learn. So want to learn more, stay and learn more.
Yeah.
It's like a musical instrument or music itself. We have yet to exhaust all of the potential combinations of notes into something harmonious, wondrous, and beautiful. And every day we get to play with those vibrations. We get to strum the strings of people's lives and our own, and get resonant harmonic things happening.
Well, you don't stop practicing. You don't stop practicing the piano just because you figured out how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, do you?
Yeah, not usually.
Neil, there was a question that for you specifically that I feel it's quite related to what we're talking about right now. And Alan, I think, is asking, in your webinar, you mentioned, you said the statement, find our will in this work. And he's asking, do you have thoughts on how to find your will while staying humble? Things together.
Stop that. Alex, I hear your laughter.
You could just revert to the line.
No, I actually think it's extremely important for each of us as individuals, obviously, to develop our own style and keep it as an adventure. Who's asking the question? Alan, from where?
London.
I don't know where it's from. I'll not mention the last name because this is going to be broadcasted, so I don't know the privacy.
Okay. Well, I fall into Nielse's arms, and that is practice. I just hear that again and again from Dr. Rolf, and I just heard it from Nielse. Practice. Just keep practicing. Keep doing the work, and lessons will come. And I just think it's so important for us to develop our own style. It's just the way David Davis was describing. Was it Gabby that you're talking about, David?
How come we knew it?
Yes. Oh, you know, it comes back to when I was attempting to lead this one of these organizations or two of these organizations. It's like herding cats because everyone is their own boss. And how do you get, I'm my own boss, to have any kind of group gathering and let alone agreement? And at the same time, it's a creative collage of learning. And Alan, wherever you are,
London. He's from London.
London, okay.
He's from London.
Continue to do what you're doing. It's, as many of us have said, the information unfolds, and often it is humbling, and there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, it bruises the ego, but what's wrong with that? It's still good fruit. And I would say, just continue to do the work. And as David Davis referred to, yes, we're all going to go down these cul-de-sacs, these, well, that was a good idea that didn't work. I think everything starts out as a good idea. And some of these good ideas become fruit, become knowledge. And others are like, nah, maybe I shouldn't have painted the kitchen purple. You know, it's like you have this experiment, you give it a shot. And if anything I've done that I regret, it's working too hard. It's pushing the river. It's pushing the tissue. And over years, I've just learned that I've got to back off. And I do that naturally now. But I think that was my biggest yellow flag. Neil, lighten up. And David Davis had referred to that. That's all I have to say right now about that. But keep practicing. As Dr. Rolf would say, roll up your sleeves. Now, most of us wear T-shirts when we work, so you roll those up and you look you look a little funny. But what she meant is keep working.
Something that Emmett used to say is that as we learn as a collective, that the collective consciousness, if you will, around and about the work keeps informing the work. And so something to be aware of is how the collective of beings who are doing this work are expanding the knowledge base that each of us works in and within. And if there's ever any doubt, you know, you can always tap into the collective. Or for that matter, crazy as it may sound, if you ever have a feeling like, ooh, I wonder what I should do, ask Dr. Rolf. she's been in my office before. She'll come in through the wall. So, you know, the collective SI world is a huge body of information that we're still just learning how to tap into.
Thank you.
You mentioned Emmett, and I remembered you'd say your line is your antenna.
Mm.
So going in that same direction.
Yeah.
For those of you that have met Dr. Rolf, but probably also for other one, there's another question from Alan. Then we're going to switch to the question that have been asked live. There are a couple of there. The question is, do you have a sense on how Ida Rolf reconciled their apparent openness to metaphysical phenomena with her rigorous scientific background? Did she consciously downplay her spiritual side in order to gain acceptance for Rolfing in scientific circles?
Yes, she did. She was very cautious outside the classroom regarding this metaphysical. I believe that most of her energy work was in the classroom. And she every once in a while would speak about who she called the good Lord. One of my favorite comments is for the third session. She said, if I ever had to specialize in anything, God forbid, I'd hang a 12th rib from my porch, and those that knew would be the path to my door. I always, it reminds me of, this may have nothing to do with anything other than an image I have in my mind. And that is when the morning lecture was over, we'd take a break and she would have her tea and cookies. And we would all stand up, and before we had stood up, we were gone. We were kind of on running blocks, whatever they call those things that runners get on. And she would come out of her chair, often a rocking chair, and stand up and just be upright for a moment. And I thought that was, in retrospect, I still think of that image. We're heading for the kitchen or the great outdoors, and she stands up and she finds her line. That was my perception back then. And I think it was accurate, because there was that pause of being the line, and then she would use the bathroom or whatever. But I always remember that. I often remember that, and that image comes to mind, that idea of re-educating or reconnecting with the line with Dr. Rolf. Now, that may have been some form of metaphysical connection, I have no idea, or spiritual connection. But it's an image that's inside me forever, and I love it. She used to do energy work with her hands. If someone would, someone had some emotional release, and she would sit there in her rocking chair, and it was going on for a while, and then she would stand up, and in a circular motion, and I can't remember whether it was counterclockwise or clockwise, she would just put her hand over the abdomen of the individual and just quiet them that way. They would have their eyes closed and they'd still be crying, and she would be leaning over and just doing this circular motion over their abdomen. There was another point that I really loved. Jan Sultan shared with it. He was in class getting a session by her, and all of a sudden he feels this great weight on his, wherever she was working, this huge weight, and he's sweating, and he feels like a big stone or a big massive rock is on top of him, crushing him. And he looks up at Dr. Rolf, and she looks down at him, and she says, Egypt. That's all she says. And it was like, for him, it was a past life connection of having been crushed. And she, according to Jan, had this connection to what he was experiencing. And just that word Egypt settled him into surrendering. That's all I remember about that moment. And I thought, okay, that's pretty profound, and talks about past lives. And Jan Sultan had a lot of those experiences with Dr. Rolf. Well, a lot of is like 2 or 3 that I can think of. And I want to say as a moment that I found Jan Sultan as quite remarkable. He was a renegade. He was like a motorcyclist who came into the Rolf community, and he was one of the first people that had a tattoo, which really was amazing for most of us. It was that running bird, that bird that zips around chasing a coyote, or vice versa.
Roadrunner.
Roadrunner. And I still admire that man, Jan Sultan. We haven't spoken about him, or I haven't. And I just want to say, if you have an opportunity, any of you, to study with Jan, please do so. He's another moment of history for us. That's all I want to say about him. And I love him.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm going to read some questions. Oh, sorry, Bert.
Sorry. About physical reality and esoteric stuff. I feel that that the moment you find the line, it's like you come into time. And most of the time you just sort of hanging in the future and the past or something, you know, and then trying to solve a problem somewhere. And I feel that that's kind of a very, for me, kind of spiritual moment. It links also very much to my meditation experience and contacts with Buddhist teachers. But it's like the body. It's all like in Buddhism. It's like, what do? Sit, breathe, be present, you know, still. And watch your mind, study your mind while, you know, just, it can be your friend, it can be your enemy. So there's something that is opened. And I feel that is for me the line, that's that connection, to be in time. And I feel to be in time is like the only way to get out of time, space. But you have to be, you accept that reality, the physical reality. And hearing Ida Rolf saying or reading, I've never heard her saying, this is the only thing that I can place my hands on. It's kind of, for me, a kind of deep statement about being, it's very spiritual, I feel. It's really like meeting, finally, you know. Yeah. Anyhow, that time thing, I think is, I work a lot with that. It's like seeing that people are sort of in a survival mechanism, sort of running away something and getting lost in that, in the stories, and then sort of coming back to, and a lot of people that I met in my life, and that made them help me, was kind of, if I look back to it, very much about learning to be here, trust, love, safe ground. As one of my Buddhist teachers would say, be sure you will die safe. You will die also perfectly. It's like, it's sort of very banal, but it's like really, for me, that might be my answer to seeing that thing with Ida Rolf about, you know, her esoteric connections and what she brought into the world.
I don't know if I know, I'm remembering a phrase now that I don't know if it was from Emmett or if he was quoting Dr. Rolf, but that the line connects the material world with the non-material world.
Exactly. Exactly.
Dr. Rolfe lived in an era when women in particular were not highly regarded, whether they were scientists or not scientists. And I think it was important for her, for the credibility of the work, to put any kind of esoteric leanings or colorings of around and about the work in the classroom. I remember the 1976 annual meeting, which was in Mill Valley, California, at a really wonderful place called the Garden of Allah. And on the last day, one of the speakers was Dr. Brew Joy, who was an interesting MD who had a cathartic experience, and he discovered chakras. But after that time, and she was 80 at the time, after that, her next class, she did an advanced and basic class, and then she did the advanced 2 classes, which were out in the desert at Dr. Joy's ranch, and they did esoteric stuff. If anything's been lost, that's one of the things that's fallen way into the background. But to develop credibility for the work initially, she kept it on an even footing so that it was provable and understandable. And that's how she got involved with James Oshman, Dr. James Oshman. And she asked him one time, "Oh, can you figure out scientific ways to prove what we talk about, this work, that it actually works?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, that won't take much." And he was at the Woods Hole Marine Biological Center. And as the fates conspired, his office was right next door to, oh man, his name just shot out of my head. Anyway.
Saying, I know who you're talking about. There.
Yeah, him. So anyway, but Oshman was able to go into the research files at Woods Hole and everything else, and he started discovering things about fascia. He was one of the very first people that I know of to really follow up on fascia and the anatomy and the energetics of it all. And Albert St. Georgi was the gentleman, and former Nobel Prize winner and one thing and another, who everybody at Woods Hole went, "Oh, he's around the turn, he's already lost it all." Well, then Jim started going in and talking to him because Peter said, "Go talk to that guy." And, it really colored his research on fascia and this work.
Kathleen is asking if Dean Rawlings was,
at Woods Hole.
Was a Woods Hole or not. I think it's for you, David.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that Dean Rawlings lived in Aspen, Colorado for many, many years, up until probably the early 90s. So, and, he was there for at least 20 years. He may have known people at Woods Hole. I don't know. I didn't know Dean well.
So I'm going to read the comment from Liz Stewart. Liz she's asking, Peter used to talk about how love is there in our clients' bodies, and through our work we help in the uncovering. And she's saying, for me, this is helping the client feel their lines. Any thoughts on this idea? First of all, hi, Liz. We all love you here, so we hope you're gonna be back soon in Europe when it will be possible for another round. So, anyone want to comment on this from Liz?
Sorry, Dario, I didn't get the first part of the question.
That Peter used to talk about how love is within the client's body, and with this work we're doing, we help to emerge and uncover that love. And what Liz is saying is that she feels like this is part of finding the line, getting the access to this love.
No, absolutely agreed. I would take this you know, even a step further, there's nothing that we actually superimpose on the client. We only help to uncover stuff that is things that are already there. We help the people find something in themselves. And one part of that is certainly love.
Can I just speak from where Alish left? Yes, I think that it's about trust, and I think that the recipe, Dr. Rolf's work, is teaching us that. When I started, it was really hard for me, 8, 9, and 10. It was maybe the metaphysical part of the recipe for me, I don't know. But then I remember also that Dr. Rolf said something like, the metaphysical is the physics we don't understand yet, or something like that, if I will remember. And so with that in mind, I just did what also Neil and David are saying, just do the work. And so there I was. But I remember that this, the trust that Dr. Rolf put into her work can teach us and lead us to be in relation with that person in that moment, in that phase of his or her life. And it's something like, if I want to sail from, I don't know, from Portsmouth to New York, and I just have the boat, but I don't have the sail. There are winds that can bring me there. And I have also the rudder. I don't know in the boat how you call the thing. I have all I have is there. But then it comes the metaphysical part of the recipe, in my view, and what is my view, which is the trust, the 8, 9, and 10. Dr. Rolf gives you the sail to catch the winds. And it's not finished yet, because the winds are many and going in any direction. So in my mind, I want to go from there to there, but I have to soon to learn how to let me bring where I need to go. And I think the recipe, the Dr. Rolf work is that to bring people in a common space, universal, timeless, as Bert say, timeless space where anyone can find
north. Find it.
One of the interesting aspects of this work, I think, is I'm going to use a kind of what I think of a hackneyed term is unconditional love. And part of what we have to do in doing this work is suspend a lot of judgments and other things. Like Neil was saying the other day, that he had a businessman that he didn't particularly care for, and he finally had to back down all of his judgments. And once that happened, he was actually able to see this person as a human being. So people come to us, they're not all exactly my kind of person. And I have to suspend judgments and go, okay, what are they here to teach me? I don't know when they come, but you know, the Rolf gods have brought them to my door. And so to the degree that I can suspend judgments and everything else and just be with that person, loving, caring, trusting, then it opens all kinds of doors. And one never knows what the quality of touch that we do with people, how that affects their life, their world, and their way of being in the world.
Emmett once said, gravity is love. And it keeps everything together.
I hope we have replied a little bit. Yes, Laurie also saying, Emma used to say this work teaches us to love unlovely people. I don't remember this, but so I think we almost we're getting around 1 hour and a half. There are a few questions I'm gonna drop, and you choose who wants to answer. So Roger is asking if Ida Rolf was still guiding you now. What is she teaching you, and what is she having you focus on? That's I don't know. If someone wants to ask to answer to this, I'll throw you them all out, so then you can pick what you want to reply. One from Ed. Ed is asking what you think about the Fascia Research Congress. And this is and then another one from Laurie. Do you have a limit for each session and why? Also, do you limit the amount of session per day?
Remember another phrase, the line is your teacher. That's regarding the first question. The line is your teacher.
I'll try and take on the Fascia Research Congress.
Good.
I have really two minds on all of this. And on the one hand, I'm really glad that we're not fascists anymore. That when you say fascia, that we're not Nazis, but that fascia has become a word which is more common in the world. On the other hand, there's been so much research that the line for our work is being lost, and of course people are, seduced into going into some sort of a fascial work without the spiritual background or without the sense of line. So that's the other side of that. On the fascial work itself, I welcome it. I welcome that Robert Schleip is doing it and other people are doing it, because I couldn't imagine myself sitting in front of a microscope and watching fascia the whole day. This is just not my cup of tea. And I'm still, if I understand his research correctly, then I'm still waiting for the explanation why structural integration actually works. Because if I read the research correctly, then none of this that we do should work. So I'm endlessly curious, and every time I see Robert, I ask him, okay, have you found out? And he kind of says, and there's these micro and these fibrous, things that are all interesting, but why does the body change to that extent that it does in structural integration so fast? And I'm just waiting. I think the brain research might give us some answers there. The Fascia Research Congress itself is fine, except that my sense is that many of the scientists have a deep contempt for physical labor like we do. So there is this sense of, you're the therapists, you're the, we are the intellectuals that think about things, and so there's
Alice, if I remember correctly, we are sponsoring the Fascia Research.
Of course, I said I have two minds about it.
Yeah. So 2 lines, but I mean, it's more that we're supporting it rather than anything else.
Sure,
we're looking forward to have the explanation.
Absolutely. That's my first thought. I'm very glad that somebody is researching this. I wouldn't want to do it. I can't do it, but it's okay. Okay.
I'm actually an enthusiast of the fascia research. I've been in Berlin last year, and it was amazing for me. I love Jim Oshman's book, but I mean, I think we are in a stage where we have a place where the Western and the Eastern medicine can meet and talk, and this is what is unfolding right now. The risk is that while it's unfolding, we can lose a part of our history. So that's why we need to focus on not losing it. But well. Sorry.
We're sponsoring the Fascia Research Congress, so that's a good and clear answer without all the stuff around it. Okay.
Let me see if I've lost something in the questions. So they're the same. We are fashionistas.
Fashionistas, yeah.
Fashionistas. To Alice from Rob. I've been puzzling over the question for 20 years as well. And, well, I think is referring to your comment. And Matt is saying, we do the impossible every day. I remember Emmett, when we started in the class, we started exchanging work or giving work to model. We used to say something like, let's miracle begin, something like that. Do you remember, Nancy? Or
something. That's the miracle happen. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
I would like to actually see, you know, I'm fascinated lately by the question. I have really toned down in my session movements to practically thoughts of movements or imagining movements.
Yeah.
And actually the effect is much bigger than if you actually do the movement. And that would be something that I think would be part of brain research to figure out how that works. That I would find that very, very interesting.
I think fascia is also one part of the whole. And structure integration is about the whole. Fascia is a very important part of it. But things don't happen only because of fascia. Or because fascia behaves like this or behaves like that.
Absolutely.
No.
That's good.
No. There's a communicative aspect between the therapist and the practitioner and the client, which is, in my mind, probably even more important than fascial manipulation.
It's the mystery.
Yeah, but that's yeah.
I remember
the metaphysic. Sorry, Bert, you go.
I remember that, I think I mentioned that when I did my thing, was that Peter Melchior posed in the training that I was, that, you know, the challenge is doing rolfing without touching, you know. And he said that before, at the end of Ida Rolf's life, he and Emmett asked her at a certain point if she would think that rolfing could be done at a certain point without touching the body. And then there was a lot of thinking, and then silence, and then it was yes. And so Peter said, this is not what I'm going, you know, it's not where I'm at, but this is sort of what I give to you. And I feel that is very much, and I met once Pedro Padro, and he's sort of doing that, kind of being with someone, asking questions, sitting there, and finding out what you need, what your body needs. And I kind of like that, because it was like this exploring from, you know, mutual presence, and then sort of seeing where information would come from. And then his suggestion, you could still do some movement or put some hands on, and then work from there. But I kind of like that idea. So there must be something, you know, like as Nilsi is saying, fascia is one thing, and structure integration is the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some information coming from another, from a consciousness or something like that, or I call it a therapeutic relationship.
Sure.
You know, as an atmosphere, as a place to be in.
Yeah.
And that's more than just 1 + 1, you know. That's 1 + 1 is 3, you know, in that sense.
I think this is this is really important what you say, and this is, Bert, by the way, was my first rolfer, so that, you know, we actually have a long connection.
God.
This is a long time ago. But I think it's really important what you say, because ultimately, I think this is one of the things that differentiates our work from many other modalities. Is this search for a connection to the client, for a deep connection to the client, and not treating the client as an object that we need to fix or better.
Fix it.
Yeah, but we're looking for that. It's like a deep sense of connection that we're going for.
I agree. Yes.
But maybe I have that sense because you passed it on to me, and this
Oh, totally. That's why. That's why.
No, it's this transmission thing. I mean, it does depend who you get roughed by at first, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing that we met, huh?
Well, we could philosophize on that. Let's not go there. But Niels, you said something similar before. You know, it's like really important, that first encounter.
Yes, I agree.
Okay?
I agree.
Something else about fascia I think is worth noting is that part of what we know from the work that we do is that we rehydrate the fascia. And something there was a term long ago that was used in the Rolfian world, which was irrigating. That part of what we were doing is irrigating the fascia. But I think what it speaks to is that physical reality can be more fluidic than what we think it is, and we get stuck in our thoughts and one thing and another. And then there's that thing called gravity. The U.S. had an astronaut, Mark Kelly, who was up in the space station for just about a year. And when he came back and he landed in Russia, he has a twin brother who actually is running for Congress in Arizona right now. But when he came back from his year in space, he was 2 inches taller than when he left. So we get back to the fascia gravity relationship. Anybody want to venture a guess how long it took for him to lose those 2 inches? Right, 24 hours.
Oh,
so,
I would give him a week or so.
Yeah, no, it was very, very fast. So fascia organizing around the gravitational relationship is really an extraordinary thing. I just want to toss out something else here real quick. That a guy I traded work with for many, many years named Jason Kane, and he was one of Ida's boys. And Jason, I asked him about Dr. Rolf one time, and he said, well, what made her the genius that she was is that she could see the obvious. I said, oh, wow. She could see the obvious. And the relationship of the body to gravity is obvious when you see it.
Yes.
But the larger fabric of society and humanity at large, that's what? Gravity? That can make you fall and this and that and the other thing, but that we can have a conscious relationship with that. Oh my God. Wondrous and beautiful.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
I go back on questions. So
there's one thing that I would like you to read relating to what David was just saying, and it's something about that I read about mindfulness, and it says, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, by breathing. It is so embarrassing easy. What good could it possibly do?
Nice.
Yeah.
Sean is suggesting a Facebook status. In Facebook you can declare if you're married or not, and say my relationship status is I am in a relationship with gravity. So we can add this one.
Good.
That's a good one. Yeah. So there's a question about what is this? Okay, what is there a sign when you work? You really need to change the glasses. When you have worked too much on a client, what are the signs that let you think that? Anyone? Adam, you're quiet a little bit.
Neil said that the other day. He was talking about being with Dr. Rolf one time.
Not all the people that are here now were all in
okay. But what I was going to say is that Dr. Rolf used to say is that when somebody's had too much work, they get a very loose sleeve, so to speak, but they're contracting at the core level. So they're shortening more deeply within. And hence, you know, we want to get to the next layer when we're doing work with long-term work, so that people are not contracting at the deepest layers, but actually progressively opening at the next layer that's available.
And David, this might be related. Can we speak on to how restriction holding patterns in the body store energy?
Oh,
This
Definitely.
is David.
Definitely.
let me quickly speak to the other one. Just one little comment, which may help the person who asked the question. When I work in a session and I do something which is not okay for that person, whether it's too much work or too little work or something, I have this experience that my own body gets weak. There's some weakness that comes in me, and then I've learned to monitor that and kind of say, okay, I need to figure out something else or end the session.
Okay.
I also think, I think that we all have had this tendency to overwork our clients at times. And in classes, when I see it occurring, and the individual, the client, the model stands up and they look overworked, I encourage the practitioner to give them a pelvic lift. Even if they've already given them one, give them another pelvic lift. Let them lie there a bit, and then come up and possibly even do some tracking. And I find tracking as very recentering for people. And the word proprioceptive in Latin means to take on one's own. And I love that, to take on one's own. And I have found that in the classes, and even in obviously my private practice, I'll do some tracking. If I find the person has lost that length and I went a little too beyond, I added too much salt to the recipe at the end of the session. That would be my recommendation. And the other thing that I would say is, if I find myself saying, I think I'll do a little more work here, maybe I'll do a little more work here. When I start hearing that in my head, I back off, because it's this little more of this, a little more of that, that I've lost the continuity and the closure of the session. So I listen to that in my head. If I'm doing this little chitch in my head, I'll go for closure rather than, I think I'll do a little more. No, Neil, back off. What I like,
Al dente.
Yeah, al dente. I like al dente. Yeah,
yeah.
And I also like the idea of a loose shoelace. If this metaphor of, I don't need to get everything. I can get the shoelace loose enough, and in a couple blocks, it's completed. In other words, when they're out living their life, I don't need to differentiate or connect everything. That, as others of you have said, there's a self-responsibility that takes place after a session. And we need to allow that to happen rather than feel like we have to dust and clean everywhere before the end of the session.
Kathleen is saying to you that her client thinks tracking is magical.
Say again?
Kathleen is telling you that her clients think that tracking is magical.
Yes.
Yeah. And David is remembering you, Neil, using the term fullness of time.
Yes.
Okay. I think we skipped one question. Let me go back and check. No, I think we said this. The restriction part. Did you comment on the restriction from David?
No.
Okay. Someone wants to comment on that?
Well, the fascia, you know, the layers of fascia tend to get knitted together. They adhere. so that in terms of the myofascial quality, there's no more sliding fiber, if you will, qualities about that. So it literally adheres in a certain layer. And it's been my experience that when people have had surgeries and other things, that the fascia will contract, depending upon the surgery, at a very deep, deep layer. And it's not just, it's never a local phenomena. So there's a lot of energy that gets tied up in there, emotional and other things. I had a guy that I worked with who I went to high school with, and he was having some chronic low back pain issues. And he had had both of his knees replaced prosthetically. So I was doing a session with him. I was doing a first hour, and I'm thinking of a first hour. He's thinking of his low back and one thing another. Well, he declared to a friend that it was the most painful thing that he'd ever felt. And I thought, wow, well, you know, they cut off his legs, but he never felt it. But I could feel the fascia contract right at the bony layer, and there was a retraction that went clear up inside of his pelvis and his lumbars, which by implication, I know has gone clear up into his cranium. So there's a little bit of a tie-up of energy there, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's fascia as a communicative layer travels at the speed of light, according to Oshman. So what happens when it slows down to the speed of sludge? Huge tie-up.
Guys, I think we need to close.
Yeah.
I made this decision. I hope you're with me with this. It's been a wonderful journey, the one I've been honored to do with you all. We had 10 wonderful webinars. This is our 11th. We have had Mary Bond and Carol and Agnieszka that are not joining here this panel, because this panel was meant to be for our faculty, but actually we should have thought differently. But anyhow, we thank them all. I thank you all. I want to remember that this is the last, but for this period, we might come up with something new. Maybe on a different format. We just think about it. We're thinking, and we are producing projects. Do check our continuing education page in www.rolfguild.eu. Check for the continuing education. We have a lot of workshop there with Neil, with David, with Nilsi. I think there was also the Mary Bond is there. Judith Ashton was supposed to come. Of course, we are reshaping and rescheduling everything, but please do check it. Our newsletter as well will keep you posted and updated. And what else?
We will have next year 2 big events. We have an advanced training with Nilsi and Neil teaching, and we have a big 10th anniversary coinciding with Dr. Rolf's 125th birthday conference-like event in Prague on June 1st to 6th. So put that in your calendars and we'll see you there. All of these people here, I think, as far as I can see, will be there. Okay?
So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Blessings.
Thank you, Dario. Dario, you have been a wonderful host and mediator for this entire journey, and can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
You.
Thank you, guys. I was so honored. I mean, you were talking to me first of all, and so that was a privilege, the biggest one.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Hey.
Ciao.
Ciao.
See you soon.
Ciao.
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 Ciao.